You're on.
All right, today we're gonna try tying an Adams dry fly in size 10. There we go. First thing I'm gonna do is just attach my thread. Now we're gonna tie it a parachute style because that's a little easier than an upright and divided wing. Thank you. So with the piece of wing material that we handed out, you can about split that in half, at least in half. Yeah, that doesn't look bad. Could even take a little less than half. Now I want to keep my thread located where I want the wing post to be, and right there it looks about good. There's different ways that you can tie these wing posts on, but I just wrap it around my thread. I'm gonna move that up just a hair. So I'll wrap it around the thread, attach it to the top, and just make a couple securing wraps. You can see how it's sticking up. Now, the next thing you want to do is secure the post at the base. Yeah, here's some that's already cut. So then, holding the material, you just start wrapping around the base with your tying thread. And then try to go up that post a little bit, because then that's where your hackle is going to be applied to. You can if you want, that because that would stiffen it up. Like he said, you can either use Zap-A-Gap, UV glue, or if you just put a lot of thread on it. But it never hurts to reinforce it. So then you're left with something like that. Next is for the tail material. So we can just use the hackle fibers that we're going to use. I like, when I tie my own flies, I like using micro fibbits for the tails, because especially on dry flies, because they're a lot stiffer, and that helps float the fly. But traditionally, they would just use the hackle fibers. Somebody once said that Coq de Leon works really well too. So I'm going to move my thread to the rear and get. All right. And tie in my hackle fibers. Next is dubbing for the body. Again, everything in fly fishing, less is more. You, you don't need that much dubbing to tie a single fly. You can see I'm going to start off with just that little bit, and that's probably even too much. Now when you're making your dubbing noodle, you try to make the top thin, and then as you go down the thread, you want your dubbing thicker. That way when you apply it to the hook shank, it's going to start off thin and end thick, and you're going to have a nice tapered body.
But you do see how he's almost starting off by just changing the color of the thread. It's not sticking out, it's not all over the place. It's tight to that thread. It's a tight noodle.
So if you can see that, very thin at the top and then gradually getting thicker down to the bottom. Now for the hackles, the recipe calls for a grizzly and a brown hackle. So again, I'm just preparing my hackle stems.
And all he's doing is pinching off the lower barbrels to be able to expose the stem to be able to tie that stem in.
Now when you tie the stem in, don't get those barbs too close to the post. Leave just a little bit of a gap. And then next is the grizzly. Trim those butts away. You can do these both at the same time or one at a time. Just going to take them both and start wrapping up. And then I'm going to come back down. I'm going to stop right there. There's different ways that you can secure these. Some people will secure the butts of the hackles to the wing. I usually like to just right there behind the eye come in with a wrap or two to secure the hackle. I'm going to trim the excess off.
And for those that have not done posting before, you're newer to posting. Posting can be a little frustrating. It can take a little practice. Slow down, take your time with it. The fact that you're attaching to the post and not the hook, The hook doesn't bend, it doesn't flex, it doesn't move. And that posting material does. So as you're trying to attach something to it and wrap it, it's moving too. It takes a little practice, so don't get frustrated. Don't think you're doing something wrong. You're not. Slow down and pay attention to it. What this posting also does is lets that fly ride a lot. It sinks into the water a little, but still rides nice and high. You can get it up off the water. You can see it. Works really well.
I'm just gonna apply just a touch more dubbing so that I can go in front, right behind the eye, and add a little bit of that gray. That might be too much. That doesn't look bad. And then come to right behind the eye, few wraps. And you can whip finish here, or I just tie in a couple girth hitches. And then if you wanted to, you could hit that with the Zap-A-Gap or the UV glue. And with your wing post material, I usually tie all my parachutes in orange, because getting harder to see things, and especially when it's early morning or later in the afternoon, close to sundown, that little bit of orange is easier to pick up. A lot of people have been starting to nymph fish, and you have that nymph wax. If you have them in white, you can take that nymph wax and just hit that post with that nymph wax and color it, and it'll make it high vis. That wing's a little too high, so then you can measure. Usually you want the wing the same length as the shank. Transfer my measurement and cut. And now this style of dry fly, like Ben was saying, it's gonna sit lower on the water. And with that parachute style, with the hackle spinning around, that's what keeps it floating. If you wanted to do this more traditional, you could still use the same material. The traditional Adams calls for the hackle tips. So you would take 2 hackle tips and then tie those onto the hook and upright and divided. That can be a little difficult, because then if you tie in your tips too long, that wing's going to be too long. For the hackle, if you were doing an upright and divided wing, you would want that tip of that hackle to be just a little bit longer than your hackle barbs. I like doing these parachutes work well for me, and they're easier to tie.
Are the parachutes better for flat water than rapids, faster water?
Could be. I mean, I don't really know about that, but it's like I said, I like tying them. Yeah. What's
So the Catskill traditional style for fast water is better for fast water. It rides up high. So the fish, it just keeps above the surface level. Where if you use a parachute and it's moving water, sometimes they get tugged underneath. So the Catskills will kind of dance on top, on its tips. But when you get into flat water, these fish have all day to stare at it. That's where the parachute seems to work better. It's on calmer water.
I got you.
Not that either or won't work.
Well, you can take your Catskill once you get to the flat water and take a scissors
and cut the bottom hackles off.
get a flat profile, if that's necessary.
Right.
And for our pros here, how many of you have Adams in your box? And it's most likely your go-to
Excuse me,
for maize.
may I speak to that since we won because of the Adams?
There you go.
I
So
wa-
for those that are
I
new,
wasn't
you just
using
saw
an
the amount of
Adams.
hands that went up. And for those that can't see on the video, 3/4 of the room just raised their hand.
You know, this fly was originally tied to imitate a caddis.
Yeah.
The dancing,
Fluttering caddis.
And
above the water, you know.
and being July 4th, it was also tied first by John Adams. That's where it got its name.
Really?
Whoa! Whoa! I got one.
John Adams died on July.
Right?
Along with Thomas Jefferson.
Yep.
6 hours later.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and stop the recording at this time. And